Are you on?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, great.
Oh my. Just got tasty.
All right. Thanks for, where'd you come down from, Paul?
Boston. We just moved to Boston a few months ago. So, yeah, still learning the East Coast ways. Apparently, it takes a little time to park in New York. So
yeah, funny that, right?
Sorry about being a few minutes late.
And you're moving from Chicago?
Yes, I was in Chicago for 12 years, a little over 12 years. So
that's a substantial comic scene in Chicago.
It is, yeah. Not so much when I moved there. It was basically like, Chris Ware and I don't know.
Was Jeffrey there yet?
Jeff was there. I don't remember when he moved. I think he moved there a little bit before I did. Chris actually introduced Jeff to me, and I think Anders Nilsson was already there. Boy, I'm trying to remember who else was there. Not a lot of people. It's definitely ballooned up since then. Yeah.
Right. Let's see. I'm going to move to the questions that I was sent. I don't want to get off script.
Yeah, they will shoot you. Fantagraphics will come down hard. I was not aware that he's been sent scripted questions by my publisher.
That's all right.
So if you notice him getting like a mysterious like cattle prod from behind the chair, it might happen. That might happen.
Okay, so the new book is Artists, Authors, Thinkers, Directors.
True.
Let me mention that this week you were on Comedy Bang Bang for any podcast fans. If you haven't heard it yet, I'm trying not to overlap with questions because that was a really great interview.
Well, please don't, because then they'll have to sue you. That's right.
So these are all. Is this a sketchbook series or is this finished illustrations? A mix of both.
That's looking really good.
Walk through what the format of the book is a little bit because it's different from your other work.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the sort of I wouldn't even want to say the origin for this because it sort of just messily was birthed into the world. Like I was doing portraits on my Tumblr site, but it really was kind of coming more out of like, oh god, it's 3 a.m. I got to do something, and kind of just picking somebody to draw. And I feel like usually any themes or patterns that grow in my work are stemming from them happening and then somebody else telling me, oh, hey, did you notice you do a lot of that? I'm like, oh, yeah. No, I didn't notice that. I think I had been doing books about sort of the nuclear family for like 5 years before somebody pointed that out to me in an interview. So it wasn't that different when I was doing the portraits. I mean, I had probably been doing them for the better part of a year before I noticed, like, oh, I'm drawing a lot of movie directors and cartoonists and all these people, and realizing that those drawings were coming out of it's 3 a.m. and then just reaching back into my subconscious and, the people that I thought about a lot and affected me a lot. Those were the people that I was drawing. So, and then just people that had really weird faces.
Sure.
So, or Slim Goodbody. Does anybody remember Slim Goodbody?
Oh, yeah.
Anybody? He's weird.
So would you call this like warm-up exercises, or was it something to ward off boredom, or is it
kind of both? Yeah. It's to be honest, like I've been doing having done graphic novels for over a decade, I've been doing a lot more TV and TV development stuff over the last couple of years, and that's all been some of it's been for animation, so I've been drawing for that. But I know the TV world. It makes me cry too. I mean, I'd been probably writing about 95% of the time and not really just drawing. All of my drawing kind of became this very utilitarian, like, okay, I've got to sit down and do character designs for the show or whatever, backgrounds or sets or whatever it was. And I just wasn't really drawing anymore. Right. So really when I started the blog, it was just that, just a way to get back to just, okay, at least once a day, I'm going to draw something, no matter what. And kind of at the same time, I started also making sure that I was writing every day, but, that wasn't really as much a problem because I was having to do that for what I was doing work-wise. But I find kind of, I don't know. I mean, I'm too nervous of a person to meditate. I'm too scared that I would, fart or something. But
you look too deep inside.
Yeah, exactly.
I like what you say.
But I think it's kind of that, where it's just kind of this. Okay, I got to stop for a minute, and for whatever it is, half hour, whatever, however long it takes, draw something,
How much does the variety of style in this book represent your process? I mean, like, are you a sketchbook guy? Do you really, like, some of it ranges pretty wildly from stuff that's fairly loosely doodled, I guess, to pretty rendered stuff. I mean, is this...
Yeah, I mean, and to some degree, that's just kind of going back to the making sure that I'm drawing, and by that, like, not having it be this hyper-calculated thing, you know, like, okay, I've got to do it in one style all the time. I mean, that's the and I think a really great thing about Tumblr is that this is, by the way, entirely paid for. This is a huge endorsement for Tumblr. No, but I mean, like a lot of the blogs I like in Tumblr and all these different, Instagram, whatever, venues that you can check out you're seeing so much different stuff, and a lot of times I'll see a style where I'm like, oh my god, that's amazing, and I'd like to say something, try that aesthetic out, like, could I do something like that, or I like that, thing that somebody posted from this 1960s cartoon, but what if it was, a little more Art Deco, or maybe it was more this. And that's just it. I mean, a lot of these drawings have led to, stories that I'm developing now and stuff like that, where it's kind of you're trying out new aesthetics that maybe you wouldn't try out otherwise. But for me, I mean, I've always drawn in a lot of different styles. Just, I don't know if that's a boredom thing or, I don't know. To me, it's just like, this is what this story needs, so you do what the story needs. And the story's kind of always been the driving force for things. So, yeah, with this, it's just kind of messing around with different stuff. So
when you mentioned Tumblr, it really might be like the first book that I'm aware of that's really driven by kind of a Tumblr aesthetic, where it's every page is something completely new and it's easy to
my goal was to distill the internet into 100 pages.
I think you did it.
Nailed.
You can shut it down.
Internet's over, so hope you got it all done, because tonight there will be no internet. So that would be terrible if everybody goes home and for some reason the internet's out tonight and they're like, oh my god,
you did it.
He did
succeeded. It represents, so we've got directors, writers, artists, cartoonists. Who are we missing? Sculptors?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there are any sculptors in there. I think there are some people in there who have done sculpture. I mean, that's another thing, is that, as I say in the introduction to the book, a lot of these people you can definitely argue whether or not they're actually, like, I think I have David Byrne in the thinkers category, because to me that's I was kind of trying to put people in the category where they influenced me the most,
Sure.
And while I really like David Byrne's music and I like his art, to me he was always kind of more important as kind of this holistic thinker about how he approaches art and music. So,
well, what I want to do is one of the questions here is about getting inspiration from a variety of sources and not just comics. And I know just from reading everything you've done that it's a pretty, Three Paradoxes in particular, and works like that are inspired from wildly divergent sources.
Right.
Let's get some random numbers, and we're going to pull up a page, and we're going to talk about who comes up, and how they've inspired you, and we'll just talk about some of the folks in the book. Does that work for you?
Let's just only pick chapter dividers where there's no art.
Let's somebody throw out a random number between 1 and 100. 74. Can we get page 74? Let's see who we got.
He's like, you're going to make me read these tiny numbers.
Oh, I thought it was PDFable. Can we?
Oh, can you? Yeah, go back to just the single page.
There we go.
View.
So who have we got?
That's Simone de Beauvoir. Yeah.
Oh, wow, wonderful.
Yeah, just jumping in the deep end. All
right.
All right, kids. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, her writing was, dude. Wow, I did not think we were going to jump into existentialism.
I love it. When did you first encounter
her? In college. So I'd studied philosophy. That's what my degree's in. And everybody just immediately leaves. So yeah, it was. There were certain philosophers that I was always kind of taken with, and it was mainly the people that I went into college thinking, what can I do that's more, even less lucrative than going to comics? Okay, I'll be a philosophy professor. So, which I remember my guidance counselor being like, what are you doing? So the people, I very quickly got disenchanted with philosophy. And one of the biggest things is that so much of it is just kind of this self-perpetuating nomenclature where it's like, I've invented a term and now I will talk about it for 700 pages, just explaining this term that I've just made up. And, it's just this endless academia circle jerk. And it's no.
It doesn't sound far off from comics, to be honest.
Well, at least with comics, you have occasional, gunfights and
sense of humor.
Yeah, that stuff, fart jokes. So just not enough fart jokes in philosophy. But a lot of my favorite philosophers were people that really just kind of sliced through and didn't get as bogged down in, I don't know, kind of self-serving fanciness, I would say. They were the kind of people like Wittgenstein is one of the people in the book also. And
we're not at that page yet.
We're not at the page yet, so I can't talk about
focused.
him. But Simone de Beauvoir is I think she's a really good example because while I feel like her partner, Jean-Paul Sartre, got all the attention, I feel like her writing was a lot more clear. And I don't have people been unfortunate enough to read Sartre, and there's going to be like a bunch of Sartre fans here or something. But his writing was just, I got it and everything, and like, the nothingness of the nothing. But I feel like she actually had more something to say, but she wasn't as important because she's a woman. So yeah,
fair enough.
And sad.
Let's get another number, random number. 36.
You okay with 36? Okay. This guy needs a raise for having to look at these tiny numbers.
Sorry.
What do we have? Oh, so is that 36? Okay, Steinbeck.
Steinbeck.
Yeah.
Tell us about Steinbeck.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, sort of the... has anybody read To a God Unknown? That was kind of... because I can't actually read anything popular by the person first, I sort of have to. Well, that's the weird thing is I went to a very tiny school in southern Ohio where required reading was.
When you say school, is this secondary? Is this high school? What?
It was just a barn, and I was taught by sheep. They were some solid sheep. Good friends of mine. No, it was a public high school. Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't even know if I could tell you what the required reading was because I think there was probably one book or something that we like Wuthering Heights or something like that. And so I really blame my older sister was the one who, she taught me algebra at a young age and would introduce me to cool weird bands and books and stuff like that. And I don't remember if it was her or somebody else, but somehow I got to reading To a God Unknown, which is just a really weird Steinbeck book. And not that all of his books are a little bit weird, but it was sort of the first book that I read that kind of had this, I don't know how to describe it, that had a scene where it was obviously metaphorical, but it was very anchored in realism, as a lot of his writing is, and very rustic, but then also had sort of overtones of eroticism in it. And it's basically a guy humping the earth. Read that book, so good. But it was the first time that I sort of saw the hand of the author, like, oh, I see what you're doing there. All right, But at the same time, not being so heavy-handed that I was like, oh, I get it. It's a metaphor,
Right.
So it was kind of, for me at a young age, that was like a pretty revealing moment of like, oh, right, okay, you could have a scene that is reality, but that is clearly talking about these bigger issues. And yeah, so that was, I don't know, that was a pretty influential moment for me.
Let's get another number. See if we can get some random comics people up here. 61.
And it's actually Steinbeck again. That's when you find out all the rest of them are Steinbeck.
Who is this?
This is...
I've got an odd angle here.
This is Jeremy Bentham. Does anybody know about Jeremy Bentham other than the reference in Lost? In Lost, John Locke... Spoiler alert, John Locke dies at one point. John Locke is obviously a philosophy name, and when he comes back to life, he uses the name Jeremy Bentham. Impressed endless people at parties with that knowledge. Jeremy Bentham he was sort of in the utilitarianism and hedonism camp, and thinking that we could sort of base ethics on the amount of pleasure that something gives you. And I think he might have been the person that invented hedons, which was trying to actually make units of pleasure. Hedonism, hedons. But the major thing, please look this up tonight. He is stuffed, and they wheel him out for meetings at one university. I think it's in London. If you Google Jeremy Bentham, I guarantee one of the first pictures you'll see is his body in a glass case. and I think it was his head was stolen at some point. So I think the head that's on there now is wax, but this is a real thing. Yeah, and it was in his will. Like, I think he gave some big donation to the university or something like that, but only if he was brought out at like board meetings or whatever it is. So there's some creepy stuff.
I love the portrait of him. You can tell that he's the type of person that would try to quantify pleasure from the look on his face.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, he's into some weird stuff, right? I mean, he did have himself stuffed, so you know.
Sure. Let's talk about comics a little bit. What's your first memory, your first interaction with comics?
I don't know if I know my first comic book was given to me by my dentist for having a great checkup. I later had a lot of cavities. He took the comic book back. That would have been awesome. He's like, no comic for you. I don't know for sure. It's really weird. My mom, who is, I love her to death, but she's not the craziest person in the world. But she's very into comedy and very into sort of mystery writing and stuff like that. So she had a lot of Edward Gorey collections. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I don't know if we had a Gay Wilson collection or something like that. I'm not sure, but a lot of the like sort of darker, like,
Charles Adams.
Yeah, Charles Adams, that kind of stuff from the New Yorker. I feel like we had a lot of that stuff. So it's sort of that, and I feel like Charles Schultz those were kind of the first things I was into, comics-wise, cartoon-wise anyway. But comics-wise, it was really like, again, living out in the middle of the country, it was just stuff that I could find at flea markets. So I had has anyone seen the Karate Kid comics? Not the movie, the disco 1970s Kung Fu fighter. Oh, yeah.
He was part of the Legion of Superheroes.
Was he?
Show some respect, yeah.
Okay, all right, yes. Show some respect. The man had a gigantic butterfly collar. That was popped. So stuff like that where, like Godzilla in the Wild West and, just all these weird what I read is the comics that everybody else got rid of. That was the whole thing. Right. So these were terrible comics. But the first comic that I got was that it was this all detergent promotional copy of Spider-Man that just happened to be all Steve Ditko Spider-Man reprints. So that was kind of my first introduction to superheroes. And then I got into all this weird offshoot B brand superheroes that was the only stuff. But every time I would find Steve Ditko, he was kind of my guy.
Sure.
So that was kind of how I dove into comics.
You're a Schultz fan too, right?
Oh yeah.
Were you aware he's a big Midwestern guy? Was that something that
that's the weird thing is I think him and then Charlie Harper were kind of two people that I really liked growing up, and I had no idea. It was just I just liked their stuff, and it didn't occur. I think Charlie Harper was from Cincinnati. Is that right? I should ask my wife. My wife's an art historian, so she knows about these things, but that sounds right to me. I don't know. I think he's an Ohio guy. But yeah, the Midwestern aspect of those things, I think, was something that I realized later, know. But there was always that sort of, just kind of that melancholy to those things and kind of the openness of the designs that always appealed to me. So,
and he's the greatest cartoonist ever.
That little thing too, yeah.
Was this something that you wanted to pursue, from a young age, or did you came to it much later?
That's a really good. I remember having an argument with my mother, except I think I was just yelling at her.
That's not
when
nice.
I was young. I was not nice as a child. I was sweet and then turned into an asshole, otherwise known as a teenager. I remember yelling at her, "I don't care if I have to sleep on the streets and eat Cheese Whiz." Why Cheese Whiz? I'm going to draw for a living or something. It was something like I'm going to make art for a living. So I knew that was something I wanted to do. And making comics was something I was really interested in when I was 14, 15, 16. But then I started, because I was drawing superhero comics, but then I started really looking into the industry and learning how people were treated and looking at, the guys who created Superman don't have any money and they got the crap beat out of them and looking at how people are censored and all these kind of things.
Right.
And my stories were starting to be they started as superhero, then they were kind of science fiction, and then they were a guy being sad in his bedroom thinking about his life, So, they were getting more and more autobiographical, and I didn't see a place for it. So, that was kind of something that that's an interesting question, because I seriously have asked myself that. I don't know, because I kind of stopped doing comics, and then it pulled me back in. But I don't know.
Mother Come Home was the first published book, or was there?
I self-published for 2 years, like 2.5 years, something like that. And then Mother Come Home was the first like book. Yeah.
So that was 98.
2003, close, yeah.
Wow.
99 was the first mini comic that I did.
Okay.
So, which was sequential, so, yeah. Which had the poetic cover of a sad old man saying, "If I could just get laid." So, pick that up. Nowhere. I actually was at a signing recently where a guy was like, "I have all your stuff." I'm like, "No, you don't." And he pulled out sequential #1. I was like, "Wow, you're my dad," apparently, because that's the only person that has that. I think I made 25 copies or something like that. So,
where did you sell those at the show, or did you just take it to Quimby's?
The first one, I mean, seriously, I think maybe I made 30, but I mean, most of the people that have them are just friends of mine and stuff like that. Yeah. I took them to, there was one shop, the Laughing Ogre in Columbus, Ohio.
Still there?
Yeah. I think I took it in there, and maybe Magnolia Thunder Pussy, which is a record shop that also sold comics. I think that might have been it. I think those were the only 2 shops that had it. So yeah. And then once I got to like issue 2 or 3, I took some into Quimby's. And when Mother Come Home came out, I walked into Quimby's. It was a promise I had made to myself. I walked into Quimby's and bought all of their issues of sequential #4 off their shelves. They didn't have it anymore. Because that was terrible.
How old were you when Mother came home?
Mother Come Home, 25, maybe 24. I don't know. 26.
So fairly quickly out of
24.
college.
Okay, yeah, she knows math better than I do. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get another random number. Let's use 24. Sorry. Kenneth thought he's off the hook.
It's like, damn it, come on.
Let's grab the age you were when Mother
there you go.
came out. Edward Gorey. There we go.
Hey, that's solid. That's solid New Yorker. There you go.
Yes.
So I mean, as I was saying, Edward Gorey was kind of, he's another person that actually kind of debated where I was going to put him in the book, because he almost was kind of more influential to me as an all-around thinker about how he approached his work. And, just somebody who just had this kind of insatiable appetite of like, okay, this is a toy. I'm going to make a toy. Mm-hmm. I'm going to design a set for a play. I'm going to, he did... Good God, what was it, like 100 books? Plus he made all these little custom books. And I mean, he just sort of that endless creation and, okay, well, I'm going to take this whatever direction it needs to go. And, so he was just always somebody that I kind of looked at. I mean, he's one of those people that I started off liking just because, his drawings are really beautiful. And I loved his animation at the beginning of Mystery, which, by the way, that is one of the worst. Have people watched Mystery where now they, have a book turning and you barely get to see his animation? It's like, come on. It's Edward Gorey's animation. That's not cool.
I thought that they dropped it completely. So.
No, it's just like you can see little tiny hints of. They might as well drop it. It's like you can't even see it at all. But that was a huge, seeing that animation, because my mom was obsessed. Like, we would always watch Mystery. My mother very much wanted me to be like an 80-year-old gay British man. So it was all show tunes and British mysteries. So sorry, Mom. I'll be 80 someday, and then she'll be happy. Because she's gonna live forever, apparently. See me when I'm 80. But yeah, I don't know. She that was when we were watching that. I was like, wait, that's the guy that did the Book of Cartoons. So that was I think that was a really monumental thing for me to realize. Like, oh, okay.
Is it fair to say that he is a technical, craft-wise, he's an influence on what you do? Have you ever thought about this? Have you ever connected the dots?
I have, but I don't know. I kind of think there's... Yes, but at the same time, his cross-hatching is just, mind-boggling to me. Yeah. I have tried to sort of emulate that in small... I'm doing a kind of fake... a catalog for a non-existent museum right now, and because I have nothing else to do, and that's kind of drawn in his style. It's very crosshatch heavy. But yeah, there's definitely. I mean, that was another thing too. Is the meticulousness of crafting a single joke was something that I really was wow, it's it's just amazing. His little subtle things he would do to create a joke in a panel was just amazing. It'd look totally fine, and then you'd be oh, it's the guy behind the curtain is what the gag is or whatever.
I would say that some of the staging, some of the meticulousness of the line work, there's a stillness to
right. I think that should sort of the stillness of his panels is definitely something that I draw from a lot. In fact, that's something that when I've tried to draw in, say, a 1970s Marvel style, I am terrible at that because that stuff's so dynamic. And there's a section in the Three Paradoxes that's drawn in that style. And that was just like beating myself over the head because I would just every time I would reframe, like, okay, new panel, and it would be like, people being incredibly still. And I was like,
right.
Oh, damn, right. And it needs to be a crazy camera angle for no reason. Okay. So yeah, that's kind of just burned into my brain, I think.
Let's get one more random number. 14.
I really want to just like land on an all text page or something.
Why do you want to sabotage my plan here? So we're also gonna take a look at some animation.
Botticelli. Nice.
Botticelli.
Classic.
What age were you when you were exposed to Botticelli?
That sounded perverted.
It was intended to be so.
Double entendre. I don't know. That's a good question. My parents were actually very good about taking us to art museums, so I'm not really sure. I think with Botticelli, and I think I talk about this in the book. So in the back of the book, there's all these little essays about, I'm basically just ripping myself off by explaining why these people are influential, but I have them all memorized. Yeah, I mean, honestly, one of the biggest things in his work is, and this is going to sound really like I need to go to therapy, but it was the eye sockets. So there's something very particular. In fact, that's the one thing that I think is really off on that portrait, is if you look at his actual work, the proportions are nowhere near that right. Like, I drew it, and I was like, yeah, okay, good. And then I really took my German art instructor in college, Pia, came into my head, and she's like, that's not what you're seeing? I looked at it, I was like, oh, God, that's not what I'm seeing. Wow. Like, the eyes are they're gigantic, right? Yeah. So I think that's the only thing that I actually did wrong, was, like, they're even more pronounced in his actual artwork. So there was something about, like, there's that and sort of Roman sculpture. There's this like sort of deep set eye that has a very particular eye socket that like I could just draw that all day. It's just awesome. It's just like shorthand for sadness. Yay. So.
That is an intense detail to focus on, but
yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I got problems.
Is there anybody that you sat down and sketched that you looked at it when you're done and you said, I don't recognize this person, I didn't capture anything about them?
Absolutely. Yes,
Who
this is
didn't
something
end up in the book.
Yes, this is where I lay everything bare. There are some in here where they're not the first drawing of that person. Billy Wilder, you can actually go back and find the original ones because they all live on the internet forever. Billy Wilder, I did not like the first one. I did a blind continuous line drawing of his, and it kind of got, but that's the whole thing about Wilder's movies, is they're so all over the place, and he worked in so many different genres that the first one I did, I was just like, yeah, like it kind of, and I think I even did like several continuous line drawings of him.
What's your favorite Wilder movie?
Oh God, that's really tough.
It is tough. There's a right answer.
Okay, for sentimental reasons, I would say Some Like It Hot, but that's only because I watched it 10 million times with my family. I don't think that's probably actually my favorite. It's usually just whichever one I've watched recently. I just recently watched Witness for the Prosecution, which is...
It's another good one, but it's not right.
It's not right. What are you going to say?
Stalag 17.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the right answer.
Okay. All right.
Who else did you not...
I was going to say Sunset Boulevard would probably be like my top, but wrong. All right.
Who else ended up on the cutting room floor, so to speak?
Well, I mean, you mean as didn't get in the book?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like a regret, where you said, I really love this person. I really want them in the book. I can't nail it.
That is tough.
Because in a lot of... these are caricatures, and caricatures are a very specific skill set, and it's difficult.
I don't know. That's kind of tough. I'd have to think. I'm trying to think of who didn't make it. I know that there's a lot that I redrew. But I'm trying to... I definitely had... Yeah, if you looked at the actual folders, there's a folder in each one of those that says probably not. Right. And those things slowly got moved to probably not. Oh, you know what? Oh, God. Honey, guy who did the Hanging Mobiles? What's his name? Yes, Calder. Thank you. Emily, everyone. I drew Calder in... I made his face out of sort of hanging mobile pieces, and it was just too cute. It was too... And, it got a ton of notes on Tumblr, but, like, I was disgusted by the fact that got notes on Tumblr. I was like, no, you should hate that. You're wrong, Well,
did you not like did you think it was a precious? I mean, it sounds
I think it was a little too precious, but it also
But it sounds like a good kind of clever.
Yeah, but it wasn't executed well enough, and it just didn't, I didn't like it as a drawing, and then I didn't feel like it captured him well enough, because I feel like it made it a little too cute, and I actually don't think his work is that, I think he sort of gets kind of fetishized as like, oh, these cute little mobiles, but like some of the stuff is really weird and like a little dark, and like it just, I don't know, it didn't work for me. So yeah.
One of the things that I really liked about the book is where in a lot of cases, well, not a lot of cases, there's cases where the likeness, it's not perfect, but you captured something either in the eyes or in the...
There were definitely cases of that where, like, there were portraits that I posted where that was not... There were ones, especially with the continuous line drawings, where there were some that I think were much closer to an actual depiction, like, photographically.
Sure.
But they didn't have the feeling of the person.
I'm kind of thinking of the Henson, maybe, where it might not be... But it captures them. I mean, it's perfect. You know immediately who it is, and it gets to the heart of it.
Right.
Is there one at that extreme where you're really pleased with it, and you think, without being a slave to likeness, I really captured this person?
Does
that make sense?
Yeah, no, actually, there's one, and I don't know where it is, so I'm not going to be very helpful. I know it's in authors. The Nabokov one, I think, is probably one of the worst drawings in the book, and I love it. I totally think it's him, but it's like his face is just completely caved in and like gnarled, and I'm like, yep. Got him. So yeah.
Let's get one more random number, then move to the animation and talk about your new YouTube channel a little bit.
Sure.
3. Love it.
That may be text, actually. I think there's,
There we go.
Oh, well. We're ending on a good one then. Honestly, another one that I wasn't really sure where to put him. I kind of debated putting him in authors. His writing was very influential on me. Just to look at where the wild things are, like the darkness of that book. He's also been but again, he could have easily been in thinkers for me, because he's also been somebody that I think, really resisted changing his work to be more palatable to publishers and to the current marketplace. I mean, Where the Wild Things Are, when it first came out, wasn't it banned in a lot of places?
In the Night Kitchen is continuously banned to this day. It still always ranks in the highest.
Good God. Yeah, and you just think, oh, well, obviously he's immune to that. And to some degree, I think people sort of in their minds think, oh, well, he must have always been accepted, and it's like he wasn't at all, So, yeah, I mean, he's just always been and honestly, whether you like or hate the movie, I think it was really brave of him to say, because apparently he'd been just approached forever to make productions. I think there was one other production of it, maybe for stage or something. I don't remember. So. But he wanted Spike Jonze to do it because Spike Jonze was kind of nuts, and he knew he would go in a crazy, weird direction with it, and that's what he wanted, and I think that was pretty gutsy, especially for somebody at that age when a lot of people would get safer and safer with their work.
Sure, yeah.
So, yeah.
I love interviews with him. He just kept getting unsafer and...
Has anybody heard the Bush quote that he has about he wanted to get invited to the White House and have a bomb strapped to him and like go into a group hug and basically blow up the president?
Yeah,
because he hated Bush that much, and it was just
hilariously hateful as he got older.
Yeah, and it was just like and kind of like when he was saying that was when Bush hatred was, certainly at its pinnacle, and like he was kind of saying what a lot of the country was feeling. But it was crazy to hear the author of Where the Wild Things Are say something like that. Like, whoa, my God, he's full of hate. But yeah, it was he was one of the best. So
looking at Sendak up there, it makes me reminds me one of the things that, if I may be so bold, I think differentiates you from your peers is an emphasis on character design. I think a lot of folks doing cartoons now, cartooning kind of stick to, they don't really they don't branch out too much design-wise, and I think that the character design is something that you really excel at, and I think that's something, Sendak also really
Yeah.
was a
Well, and that was the thing too. I think something that was really influential for me looking at his stuff that I wasn't realizing when I was young was, oh wait, the guy who did this also did this and also
Right.
did this. And I mean, when you're older and you're kind of taking a bigger look at it, it's like, oh well, yeah, obviously that's the same guy, and you can see the similarities in the line and stuff like that. But yeah, he did really take a look at. I mean, like Little Bear, which he drew, and then like you look at Where the Wild Things Are or something darker, like. It's kind of crazy that that's the same guy, but yeah, that was but to me that's it just gets back to what I was saying about story. Like for me, designing the characters and even like the paper that the book's on and all that
Sure.
stuff.
So that's I mean it's
part
all
of
an
the story.
intentional decision. Like you never think to yourself like I need to stick to a model that I'm good at and stay with it, or
Yeah, that's
you
the thing
want
is
to push yourself.
Well, but it wasn't, it was never really a conscious thing. It was just kind of
Right.
like, okay, this needs to be this. And then, I mean, again, it was, because I'm probably dense or whatever, it was something that people had to point out to me like, oh, you do all these different styles. And I was like, do I? I don't. Yeah, oh, yeah, I get totally on purpose. Part of it is probably, a boredom thing on some level, I'm sure. But, like, it's really just like, okay, this needs to look like this. In fact, sometimes when I'm doing stories, it is a little painful to me to be like, oh, God, this guy from, like, the 1920s needs to draw this, not me. All right, I'll do my best. Like, that's kind of that's sort of where I am mentally with, some of the stories. Is like, all right, this needs to look like this to service the story. So, yeah.
Good
question.
Yeah. Well, she's being a jerk.
She's being amazing, actually. 4 months old, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a trooper right there.
Let's. You want to introduce your YouTube channel real quick and talk about the idea there, and then we'll take a look at it?
So, I mean, to some degree, it's just born out of doing all this animation stuff and TV development, and kind of not really that world for. I mean, I'm sure everybody's very aware of this, that it takes a long time to develop anything, and a lot of times things don't get out into the world. But the more I've been working with people, and the more kind of teams I've been putting in place with things, and the more I've been learning about this stuff, I was like, I could do a lot of this stuff just on my own if I keep it pretty simple. And I'd been writing all these short stories and monologues, and it was just sort of all the stuff that kind of came together at once, and I was like, you know what, I should just start putting this stuff out in the world. So that was kind of the start of the channel, which just came out. It's not as good as Toy Pizza, which everyone should subscribe to. Good plug. Yeah, okay, I got paid for that. But yeah, I don't know. So yeah,
Do we have a short
I
item
think
to look
so.
at here?
Yeah, so this is
and then we'll open up to questions, and then
sure.
Yeah.
I think there we go.
So, were you doing stuff before Comedy Bang Bang, or is this all stem back to? Was that your initial?
When I was a child, I went to the...
Oh, sorry.
I would say yeah. So I did animation for Comedy Bang Bang. It's sort of honestly that was kind of all happening at the same time. I was already kind of developing some shows with people at that point. But,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
So, no, it's okay. Yes, that is my voice.
Cool. Do we have any questions?
The wonders of pitch shifting. Zero questions.
Can bring over this intimidating microphone. I can just talk into it because it's really
You
satisfying.
can just air your grievances in general. This is all being
Okay, cool. Here we
it's
go.
all on tape, so there you go.
Hello.
Hello.
That's close.
Is
Okay.
that on?
I was wondering, you were saying earlier that like a lot of the themes that you have, you hadn't noticed until they were pointed out to you. So how do you feel about artist statements and like having that? Do you think it's better to not because it's freeing and then other people can tell you, or?
Yeah, I don't know. To be honest, I'm really torn about that. There are pieces, when I'll be in a museum and I'm looking at things, I really try to just absorb the artwork without reading the artist statements. I feel like, I don't know. I think it's a mixed bag. Like, I think with some exhibits, it's really good and it's helpful. I think it's particularly helpful when it's just sort of, okay, here's a historical context, that kind of stuff, and maybe there's some kind of limited artist statement or whatever it is. But I definitely, and I'm sure we've all seen this, seen some modern art where it's like, okay, yeah, sort of the whole power of this thing is the artist statement, and then you've got a thimble and some dental floss on the wall, and like, I don't know if is that really about your mom? I'm not sure. You know what I'm saying? Like on a certain level, it's like, so you wrote a short story and then you put some crap on a wall. Okay, so I don't know, and that kind of gets back to what I was saying with, finding what the piece needs in the first place. Like, well, if it's just a story, like, just let it be a story. Like, is it an art piece? Like, and that's why I feel like when the artist statement sort of takes on a weight that's past the actual piece, that's when I have a problem with it. Although I've also seen people play with that, and it can be, like, I've seen pieces where it's like this gigantic artist statement, and then like it's just this little dot on a wall, and like that's pretty funny. My friend and great cartoonist Anders Nilsson did an entire essay on an art piece that was like, you're looking for the art piece and you realize he's written the entire thing about the electrical socket on the wall. And so I mean, I think there's ways to play with it and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have a clear-cut answer because I sort of have a love-hate relationship with those kind of things. That was a very good question.
All right, we're actually running a little on time here. I don't know if anyone has one more pressing question, maybe we want to call it.
Well, if you have one later, you can email me.
These guys will still be here for a while,
That's right.
too.
We'll be here for another 3 hours.
So we do have copies of Paul's book over by the registers if you want to check them out, if you haven't already. Thanks to you guys for braving the cold. Thanks to Paul and Alex for coming out. And he will be signing copies of this book.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.